And we are recording. The meeting will come to order. I have this backwards. I would like to approve the minutes first for December 13th. Nicely done by member Dave Boyle. May I have a motion, please?
Motion. I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, who's doing meeting minutes this time?
Omar?
Oh, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. There are, some of the things I sent everybody are printed right here if you'd like a copy, a hard copy. There's 3 things there, the mayor's letter, Tom's and my ideas on Article 5.
I do.
So, thank you, Mayor LaChapelle, for being here this evening. The mayor has sent us a letter, and just to remind everybody, the mayor is an equal partner in deciding what charter changes get sent to the legislature for review, or to the voters. And she has an opinion on how we should proceed. And I'll turn it over to her. You've read her letter.
Yes, so the work, I mean, I've come to a couple of the meetings and certainly talked to different members of the committee and read minutes. The work is substantial. I think you all knew that when it began, and I think the issues that have come up are deep, and I want to check in with this committee around timeline and not to rush the work. We have some timelines around binding ballot questions that are coming up very soon, and I'm wondering, I want to take a temperature around especially terms and elections. Vice Chair Peak and I had a conversation about bringing my memo more fully out in the meeting, as well as Chairman Rist and Council President McCoy, around how to proceed and make sure that we are not rushing work or setting up this committee to have work put aside because they're missing a deadline because of the good work that is being done here and the depth of the conversation.
So,
I would, and have that discussion.
the discussion therefore is, it is very clear to me, based on a lot of people, including the Collins people, that if we do charter changes involving elections or terms of offices, we must have a ballot vote.
I think that's good.
And that, based on discussions I've had with the Collins Center, would require us to get done June 1st to get it to the legislature so they can approve it, and then gets to the ballot in time, September, all that. The mayor is saying that may be rushing it. And I feel as well that when we started this thing, I always wanted to do housekeeping, but the committee wanted to try and do terms of offices and elections eventually. Mm-hmm. I looked into also non-binding questions with the clerk, Barbara Bombard, and it is very possible to put as many questions as we want on the ballot as long as they're to the clerk 35 days before the election. So that's easy. This committee could decide to put a question about terms of offices for every elected official, how many districts we want, how many counselors we want. All of those questions could inform, in a non-binding way, the next charter review committee. So I believe those are the options in front of us. And I believe the mayor would like us to do the option that does the non-binding questions, which I have to say I'm not against. I'm in favor of that too.
I mean, on the timeline of the June 1st and then rolling that back to internal counsel, House counsel, and whatnot, I am concerned that that's a hard deadline and it's coming up fast, and the work that the committee has done, I will, sure, I'm concerned that we might not hit that deadline and work might be stopped at that point. Otherwise, because the committee feels like that was their focus. But the ambitious schedule of this committee, I've heard folks feel like they can make it. They can make that schedule, or will have something to offer that is a binding question, around terms of elections. yes,
Well-
I'm an equal partner, to say yes or no. And with a full-throated conversation in this committee, I'll, hear that and take it in. I would not mislead the committee to say, okay, wonderful, and try to make that deadline and then veto. I think there's an ongoing conversation. I would just want to put it out there very clearly about rushing this work. And I wouldn't want the committee to feel that, nor would they, I don't want them to think that the mayor has this expectation that it's done by this time, or it's,
Okay.
will veto anything that looks at a binding question, or if that deadline is not hit, that I will disengage, which I will.
Before I go around the room to get a response, there's a couple of other things. We're about to get from the Collins Center a review of pay plan positions, or positions, all positions, which will address charter changes, which could be significant. And we're also looking at other things administratively in the charter, in articles, especially Article 6 coming up. That will take some time to deal with. Also, even if we take till September, which is the year we have, it doesn't mean that we won't be told by the legislature, sorry, you've made too many changes, they have to go to the ballot. Even if we don't touch elections. It was clear to me from the Collins Center person who was here that that could happen. Legislature might decide, well, we don't want to approve this with a legislative act, it has to go. So those are the things in front of us. If we do decide not to rush this May deadline or the June deadline, then we have more time to deal with those other tough subjects. I'm going to go around the room. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a lot of thoughts on this, as you might imagine. My first one is that I don't feel rushed right now. I feel busy, but not rushed. We have completed 4 of the articles of the charter that happened, if I'm not mistaken, to be, in terms of page length, we're about halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
We have 5 articles to go. A couple of those articles are going to take a few meetings and they're going to be busy. But a couple of those articles are, I've already read the whole thing. My recommendations are ready to go. I just send them out on Sunday nights. So there's a couple I don't really have a whole lot to weigh in on. Tonight being one of them. I think that if we, so here's the big question that I want to know is, my understanding of this is that we send something, say that we were to want to do something binding. The council would have to
Approve it, and the mayor has to approve.
The council would have to send something out in the beginning of June, right?
That's the timeline. I haven't asked, because of this discussion, I sent some questions to the attorney, but I didn't ask for the timeline because I wanted to see where we were headed, given the mayor's thoughts. But that is the timeline that I'm almost certain of that I got from Collins Center. Because the House Council has to look at it all.
Mm-hmm. But the House Council doesn't have to look at it before the council approves.
No,
The council
we don't
sends
send
it,
anything to them
and then
until
House Council. I'm
Not
just trying to
until the mayor
understand.
The mayor and the council has to approve it first.
Right. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand this deadline, because if the conversation that we're having is whether or not we have enough time to do this stuff, then I need to understand what kind of time we have left. How much time do we figure, so we've got to get something, in other words, we have to get something to the city solicitor by a certain date.
I think I sent all that out.
So that the city solicitor has an adequate amount of time to review it. What are we talking, a month? 2 weeks?
We don't know.
I meet with the city attorney tomorrow on a whole bunch of issues, and this is on the list. But he has been, for other reasons, looking at the charter, and one, just general familiarity, but also we've just had some other issues come up as the Collins Center report is finalized and making sure ordinance and everything is aligned. But I can ask him. I think one of the replies I'll get from him is it depends on the nature and the scope of the changes. Sure, as long as a month, it could be, it depends on his schedule as well. I don't think it would be more than a month, and I would hope that it would be less than a month, like 2 or 3 weeks. But.
So if we had, let's be concerned, maybe if we have a month, if we need to build in a month there, then that means that we've got 8 meetings, right?
Well,
2
I have
meetings a
May
month.
1st for council receipt of our document.
Okay.
That's what the original timeline I put out.
So that's.
And that, at the same time, I could send it to the city attorney,
Mhm.
and then we have a public hearing. This timeline had a public hearing on May 25th.
Okay.
Huh?
7 meetings plus tonight to go over 5 articles, plus touch back
Well,
on
we
the
have to
stuff
go
that
back
we.
into the biggies that we
Yeah.
put aside.
Right, but I mean, I think a lot of those are probably just gonna come to us taking a vote on them, you know, I mean, we've percolated on them for a while. I think, maybe I'm wrong there, but, and then we're gonna have to address some Collins Center stuff. So yeah, I think it's possible that we get close to that point and we say, look, we have a lot more work we need to do, and let's not pass anything off to the council. Let's keep working, let's talk non-binding questions for the big stuff. If that's what happens, then obviously that's what we should do. We shouldn't rush this. I'm just not quite ready yet to say, personally, and if I'm the only one here, then fine. I'm personally not quite ready yet to say there's no way that we're going to have a great and complete document done in the next 8 meetings. So that's where I am.
I have April 11th, our first meeting in April, for the tabled motions, which was all those things at the bottom of the agenda. So you know, that's basically when we get back in terms of offices and everything else. Let's continue. Joe?
No, that's.
Oh, Sarah?
Thank you. I'm largely in agreement with Tom. I would say that, however, from my recollection, I don't think that a lot of those things were just settled and we were gonna vote one way or another. I think that particularly terms and elections, we had a lot. And I feel like we might be better equipped to make decisions on that if we maybe made some assignments to committee members to summarize some positions or to bring some options or some sort of thing like that, so that we're not just sort of like thrashing around blindly as we could, because we had good discussion, but it was not coming towards any sort of conclusion. And I think that if we do some prep work, we're in a better position for success, because I think that sitting here without resources, without the ability to research, without things like that are gonna stymie us in a meeting kind of situation. So I think if we you know, dig into it and then have somebody come with some findings, or whatever, or anyone can come, but I just think we need to kind of.
You want to keep it on the table, it sounds like.
Yeah, I do. I don't wanna call it yet, but I also think that we can figure out ways to function more effectively and just be ready to take the limited time that we have.
Robert?
I would agree with both Tom and Sarah that I think some prep work is in order, and there is still the potential to meet the deadline, but there's not a guarantee that we'll meet the deadline, so keep our options open.
Joe? I want to go to the members first, the voting members, and then I'll ask for Shane and Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sort of, I mean, I think we should continue with where we're going. I'm fine with non-binding questions. I know Thomas, you know, but if we're ready for it, I'm trying to think if there is a strategic reason to have some non-bindings. For instance, for ranked choice voting, Tom, would you like to have time to educate the public about what that means before there is a final binding vote on it, you know?
It's pros and cons.
Can we
I
do
mean,
that? I didn't even know if we could.
I mean, it's just a question. I mean, I mean, it would probably be done independently with the group he works with. But you know, some of these things, is there? If you want it to pass, is there an education that would it be out there too soon binding? So I would be fine with going on as we are going. I'm fine with non-binding if we're ready. Binding is fine too. I completely agree with Sarah that. Especially the elections, we were all over the place. We were from 13 counselors to 2 precincts,
gonna
to
take a lot of
counselors.
discussion.
I mean, so, you know, and maybe there should be some votes on this committee. Do we want to even ask the question, do we want 13 counselors? And if the committee says, I think that's too much for work, we've had one really competitive election before that, no, maybe we should go a few more cycles to see if the interest is still there before we go to 13. Maybe that would be a question that we would take a vote on and say, okay, that won't be a non-binding question or won't be a binding question. So I agree. I think some of that big stuff out there, if different committee persons would like to get together and say, okay, I'm gonna tackle election terms, I'm gonna tackle this, be a good idea. And I think from the mayor too, I'm just wondering, because I know we talked about budget, looking at lawyer stuff. And, should we be, if we send question 5, Article 5, asking a question, there may be something that contradicts it in Article 8. So should we get through everything before we send our questions to the attorney? And then also, is it something that, budget is real. Is it something, how do we need to plan this as far as for the, fiscal 2020 budget?
I'll answer the questions backwards. Budget is very real, especially with, just legal costs and with the projects that are going on and work on several different legal fronts. It is certainly a really big looming cost. And the exciting part of getting, so many grants and projects going is wonderful, but implementation and legal review is another necessary part and costs money. Along this, our conversation with giving the charter revisions or questions article by article, I am worried about doing work twice because of the interconnectedness. And when Councilor Deep was talking about, legal review, in my head for that couple of weeks was thinking about the whole document.
That's where I am too.
Yeah, that falls in this fiscal year. There's a concern. I certainly wanted to hear the temperature of this, the committee in this meeting, with grave concerns. My first concern is the rushing of the work, and then 2, the money to pay for the review if we can get to the ballot, for a binding question. I think our finance director to my left would probably swap those priorities, but let's, once I get a little direction around what you guys, would like to proceed and what you think we can get done, then, then the money conversation and crunch, really begins in earnest.
Omar, you want to pass the Pat? Passing the Pat.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't feel like we're rushing either. I think we're cruising along. I don't think we're rushing the process. I'm always the optimist, so I think we can get done what we need to get done. Even those couple of those big things, we did go around and around, and I think now that we've all had some time to even think about that round and around, we're probably, it'll take a while. I'm not saying it's going to be short, but I think we're going to be a little more focused now than we've heard everyone's kind of, okay, I think maybe this, I think maybe this. I think we've all had some time to I know I have some time to think about, okay, what do I think about more counselors or changing the terms? I've had some more time to think about that. So I think it'll be it'll go along, but I don't feel like we're rushing either.
David.
Couple of things. I have a little bit of a loosey-goosey attitude. As far as the timeline, I like seeing June 1, but my attitude was it was going to take whatever it takes. I have a general question. We might have talked about it, and I'm sorry if we did. Regarding June 1, sending it to the legislature, so it appears that if the legislature needs to do anything, June 1 is the deadline. So if we don't make it, we're into next year. Is that correct? Do they have another time period they could pick this up?
Based on the conversations with that consultant, it sounded like they wouldn't even touch it at the legislature for a month, and then when they did, they might send it back to us for edits. And this is based on her experience with, say, Northampton and other places where they had actual consultation. So yes.
So no, again, so the June 1, I understand that, Dan. Thanks. And that's in order for in order for the legislature to do their actions, yea or nay, so that we can put it on our ballots
In September.
So if we want September ballots, June 1 is our deadline.
We have to get it to I think, the Secretary of State or the clerk by September, yeah.
Well, my only question was...
For binding questions on the
Right.
ballot, right.
Yeah, but my only question is why why are we worried about doing this in 2019 as opposed to 2020?
That's the big question. You're right.
So when we had our,
Wait, Tom, please. All right, I haven't heard from everybody. Omar, you want to speak now?
Yes, I do. I agree with most of you guys. I don't think we're rushing anything. I agree with Pat. And the terms that the stuff that we moved for the next or the last few meetings, we already have a huge discussion here. We're gonna have a consensus at the end because we have a better view than we were before we came here the first time. I don't think we're rushing anything. I think we should take everybody's concerns or change in the charter really seriously. And if we make I agree with David, if we made the deadline, we made it. If we not,
Okay, that's a good one. I saw the mayor's hand up, then I want to ask Shane and Lucas if they want to contribute, and Laura.
As far as the 2020, and I would have to confirm, but the questions on charter change, binding or non-binding, I thought it could be on a municipal ballot, but you could not do
It only,
2020?
if
right?
2020 refers to the fact that we have to have another charter revision.
Okay,
The next time that can be on the ballot is 2021.
okay. Thank you.
And that's the basic, just as, what,
clarification.
okay.
When we had that meeting with the Collins Center, we could put it on an even year ballot. Northampton did that. They did this whole thing and then they put it on the next year's ballot, which was also like a governor's ballot. At that meeting, Barb very specifically and explicitly asked us to please not do that.
Because it's not the same ballot, it's two different ballots.
Two papers.
You have to
Yeah.
do two papers.
And-
It's very
right.
complicated.
And it would just be a headache for her, so.
No, it's a headache for the citizens too. if I'm-
Sure, yeah. And so if we wanted to do that, it would probably come with a lot of apologies to Barb, which I don't.
Well, anyway, that's another discussion. We could do that, yes. Shane?
I would say, given like how much we have done so far, I think we could make a June 1st deadline. I would agree that like more prep work, I think, for meetings would need to be done, like kind of delegate research like that.
Lucas?
Yeah, I agree with Shane. I feel like David and Omar were saying we could reach this deadline. If we don't, we don't. But I feel like the purpose of me and Shane being here is to help at least with research. And even if we get to the point we're at June 1st and we feel like we haven't done what we needed to do, me and Shane could maybe look up some stuff that you need us to help speed up the process or anything.
Yes, I would
And
love
provide that.
Laura?
Okay.
You don't want to put it, yeah, okay. Wow, okay. I'll just say that I agree that we're not rushing. With regard to the major questions, the only one I felt like we could reach an agreement with at the time was terms of offices. And that had to do with school committee, council, staggered terms, and the mayor's 4-year term. If we did that, I think there was more agreement on that. But when it came to the size of the council, whether the district should have 2 counselors or things like that, we were all over the room. And if it ends up being we spent a whole half hour, 45 minutes on that when we get to April and we don't have a consensus, then we know. That's gonna need a non-binding question to put it forward. So I'm in favor of continuing. I feel like we might get terms of offices out there. That's just me. But I also feel that we do need to give the city attorney a month to look at all this. We sent it to the city council, and we sent it to the city attorney at the same time. The council may want, other councilors may say, look, I really don't agree with this section. They have a right to request an amendment. The mayor may say that. She has a right to request an amendment. I'm hoping when we get the document done and we send it to the city attorney and to the mayor and the city council, we can get a lot of feedback pretty quickly. But I do feel like we should continue, but not with the feeling like, oh my God, we're spending too much time on this, we're never gonna get to that big question. If we're spending a lot of time on administrative code, which is the next article, we're spending a lot of time on it. Because I believe there are some, we're gonna get some advice from the Collins Center on that, and from the city attorney, on positions. We're gonna get some advice. I asked about executive versus legislative authority. I asked him that. So I think we're gonna have some major discussions to deal with. That's where I am. Laura, I saw your hand up.
I'm just a point of clarification. So from what Nicole was saying, it was my understanding from what the mayor was saying, it was my understanding that the month or so for the city solicitor to review would be triggered if the committee were to tackle one of the larger scale items.
If we get done in time, and we did the terms of offices, we'd have to get it to him in May, in order to get it to the legislature.
That I understand.
But the other thing I will say, if we decide tonight, let's continue, I'll ask the mayor to have the conversation with Mark about the timeline. Because the Collins Center gave us all this. That was a brief meeting, and I believe them. But I'd like to have him, I can't talk to the House Counsel. Only our city attorney can. So our city attorney calls the House Counsel, hey, is this true? Maybe we get more time, who knows? But that's what I'd like to find out. If we're gonna move forward with this, I'd like to find out real definite, I didn't ask that question. Mayor, do you
Well,
agree with that?
I do. I mean, I was going to seek clarification, but the conversation among the committee just now, and the timeline for city attorney to review as much as a month, I do wonder if there is a division of labor or review. So if there were a question that we feel very strongly, like terms of office or whatnot, that will need a binding ballot question, is that a separate review and maybe could be shorter? And not.
Separate review.
So just reviewing the nature of the question and not the entire charter, and that can happen over a longer process, like the housekeeping. I mean.
Well, no, you're right, and to get back to that, I believe I clarified that you can't put more than one question on the ballot for the same charter. Charter review, and then a separate question on terms of offices, so that one doesn't negate all the housekeeping we've done. Because they could vote it down because they don't want to give the mayor 4 years. They could vote that out, and that's what I think we can do.
Right. And I just wonder, like in my head, I just thought if we're going to a ballot, binding question, that would happen in conjunction with an entire review of the charter, including the housekeeping items. And
Yes.
I'm wondering if the lawyer could separate out the major questions to go to the ballot.
Oh, sure, whatever advice we can get. Tom?
Well, I mean, it just might be shorter timeline.
So are you suggesting that we could potentially send to the council 2 legislative petitions?
I'm suggesting that any legislative petitions that reasonably look like they'll end up on a ballot
Mhm.
are sent to the city attorney separately from an entire charter review for housekeeping, and just as to form. And I just throw that out there, but I'm just thinking about timeline and the commitment of the committee, feeling like they can make that timeline. If to look at 1 or 2 questions or just binding questions, is that less time than this very holistic view of the charter?
Laura?
So I might make a suggestion that will likely flesh itself out as well, we're meeting tonight, that maybe an adjustment to the schedule and the itinerary for the individual meetings might be necessary, where you could pull a date in the next meeting or 2 for basically lobbying and discussion of larger scale issues of import, to insert that further toward the middle, because what I was wondering, and what the mayor addressed, would be the potential that if you were to say tackle 1 or 2 finite issues that would trigger a binding ballot question, those could be reviewed by the committee, either thumbs up or thumbs down, and that draft could be sent in advance to the city solicitor to review separate and aside.
I'll think about that. I don't disagree, but I also like the fact that we've been going article by article. And I have to say, on the mayor's question about housekeeping versus the binding big decrement, the housekeeping that I define is when we say, okay, let's call it electronic communication. It's, putting in some words that are more modern.
Yes.
And cleaning up things that are obvious contradictions or whatever. We've done that. But when you get to things like changes in the charter around positions, they may be big enough to trigger a ballot question.
Right.
And we don't know that. I don't know whether that's considered housekeeping or not. I know what will, terms of offices and elections,
Right.
but the other ones, I'm thinking might too. So I would have to get some advice from you and from anybody.
Yeah.
Should we send, okay, we just made a major change to administrative code based on the Collins Center, and I'm hypothetically, I don't know what they're gonna tell us. Do I send this to the attorney right away to see, do you think this is gonna trigger a ballot question? You probably will, I think. And the other reason is maybe it should. We're making a major change, if we're making a major change in the government, administrative code is a pretty big article. If we make a big change, why can't the people vote on that? Shouldn't they?
I think there's a
That's in my
consensus
head.
to that. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think that's ever been.
Well, I know, but
Well,
I'm
I don't
saying.
know. I don't fully buy that. I mean, I'll go along with it, but I'm not so sure. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not so sure it's necessary on some things. I guess, you know.
I think that the rule that the Collins Center suggested in their meeting is that anything that substantially changes the way that citizens interact with their government requires a change. So if we need a sort of general guidepost of what we could expect to trigger it, you could think, does this radically, I don't think that changing how long it takes for the city, how long the city council has to review an appointment by the mayor substantially changes the way that
No, timing
citizens
like
interact
that,
with their
that's
government. Changing how often they vote for a mayor does.
Yes.
So,
Well, changing whether or not a position can be created by the mayor through contract or through ordinance, to me, is a major change in government. So I don't know if that's
that's sort of a
totally
gray
true.
area for me.
Yeah,
I don't
that's a
know.
gray area, that's what I'm saying. All right,
Just
Bob.
one thing, as we get to some of the more difficult discussions in the future, I think we should go into it understanding that we may never reach unanimity and be ready for that. Because consensus doesn't mean everybody has the same opinion. Consensus
I mean,
means
we
the
have
group
a
as a
s-
whole is willing to support the decision of the group. So I can still have a different opinion, but still get behind the group.
Well, we have a 2/3 majority necessary for city council and for this committee to vote on anything. We could try to vote, but my feeling was, when we got to how big the council was, we weren't gonna get 6 votes in favor of anything. But that was just me. Where do we wanna go with this, Mayor? Do you want us to continue? Because it's important for me to know, because it is gonna incur some attorney fees. I mean, no matter, if we get into elections and we get into that, definitely have to get him, as Laura brought up, 2 separate maybe questions, if we go that way. So, I don't know, you're the keeper of the budget, and
I am.
I could go either way. I could go with non-binding questions, I could go with trying to get something done. I just do what the committee feels is the consensus, you know?
Well, I'll go back to the memo I submitted to you, Chair, and for consideration to the rest of the charter review committee. I am concerned about timelines and hitting those. However, I also, and sure, because of the budget, but also just because of rushing such really a weighty topic and change to our government. Many on this committee feel like there is substantial and substantive work that can be done, and the timeline is reasonable, and I would not want to start that, I would not want to stop that momentum any more than I would, you know, in the alternative and see a major timeline missed. I mean, I'll double down on certainly the budget, but also with the attorney tomorrow and any of the other issues, including parsing out questions that clearly would need a ballot, a binding ballot question and non-binding, and see where, what the options are. But
Let me say this, I want to say applaud this committee, because we have had meetings twice a month, 2-hour meetings each time, and they have come strong and have dedicated themselves to doing this. And when you said the word momentum, it made me feel like, let's not stop that momentum, this committee, and our volunteers from the public, like Laura and Chris, who isn't here tonight, they've come a lot and they've put a lot into it. Let's keep trying to get it done. If we get to April, when I wanted to get to those elections, you know, and things like that, and we can't come up with a good sense of where we are, well, that's the way it goes. But I'd like us to keep going and try to do it. The only thing this means is I might send you my question on timeline that you could ask the mayor, Mark, tomorrow. I'll send it to you, right away. It's very simple. My timeline, does it work? Am I right about that?
Sure, no,
And he may have to call House Counsel to find out if it is.
And find that out, and I would maybe suggest, well, it's not for me to give out assignments, that Lucas and Shane could look at other timelines that other cities have followed.
There you go.
And do some, and as far as accessing the ballot and non-binding versus binding and what years that actually can happen.
So do you get that, Lucas and Shane? I'm gonna say as chair that I agree with the mayor that you should do these, and I thank you for doing this. I
I
have to
think you
thank.
might
who was
want
it?
to email that.
I was gonna say,
Assignment.
That might be a little bit.
I'll email Scoop.
Thank you.
So ballot questions and the timeline. If you get the process from other cities, that'll really be informative, okay? Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mary? If in a perfect world, we have a couple of we get everything done, and we get everything on track, can we afford, simple question, can we afford to do it? Can we realistically pay an attorney to review everything and whatever the cost is gonna be associated with this? Can we realistically do it? Or should that, if I really want a new pool, but I really can't have a new pool until next year. So are you saying that is the bottom line that if all of this is done and we're great, we might not have enough money to pay for it, to go through the legal process at this time? Maybe we should just say, make it next year. Sorry, it's kind of a loaded question. But I'm asking.
Puts her on a hot seat.
I know I am, but I don't mean to, but,
No, there's little to no money,
okay.
for legal, I mean,
Well, I'm being realistic.
like,
Yeah.
Somebody
now,
voted for
budget-
cannabis, you see.
Yeah. And
That's
one
what's
thing I'll
costing.
say about, cannabis or, just not
Bonding.
yet to be accepted Airbnb tax, it feels like new dollars, but it's really replacing lost dollars, especially with inflation and whatnot. So there's not, a growing expected pot of gold. I want to talk to the city attorney about what that review would look like, and I know he's gonna say, well, it depends, but get some idea of that. And report back at the next meeting. I mean, is there money just hanging around that I put aside for this?
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, but.
It would probably require supplemental appropriation in any case.
Sir,
Just knowing
it
things.
it would indeed, and who knows what the next.
And it may not
couple
even
months
have to
will bring.
do with the charter review that you would need that because of all
As a matter
the,
of fact, it might not.
because of all the city attorney needs we have.
Exactly.
Laura.
So rebalancing all of that.
Yes, Laura.
So just speaking as a member of the public, I don't know if anybody watches these meetings, that's a big deal, that this conversation is happening tonight, that there may not be funds. I also think that it leaves you open to the potential optics of somebody being dissatisfied with the outcome of what this committee reaches and saying that, well, we can't move this forward because the funds are not available. My strong suggestion would be to nail this down yesterday and make that public knowledge, whether or not there's funds available to advance the work that people.
Let me say this.
And I want to be clear, I wasn't saying.
No,
that.
No,
it's
but it was a
nothing to
very
do
good
that.
question,
No.
Pat.
It's fine.
Here's what I'd like to do. The mayor's gonna talk to the city attorney tomorrow, next day. Come back to us next meeting on the 24th and give us what she thinks is affordable. We make a final decision where to move on this at that time. Because I think Pat's right and Laura's right. If we're gonna move forward with this, we need city attorney review.
Oh, absolutely.
And it may require that we find funds for it, but that'll be your decision. So why don't you get back to us? You've heard everybody,
Yes.
because you have a right to say, look, we can't afford it this year, let's just do housekeeping. If that's what we have to do, okay? And I have to say, the mayor was that way when I asked for the money for the Collins Center to sit in at every meeting. She felt that was too much to ask right in the middle of the fiscal year. And she asked that we look at it for the 2020 review because they offered to help us at a considerable, like, $10,000.
But that, Dan, everybody was aware of on day one.
Right, so
This-
you're right.
I'm not a member of the committee. I'm learning about this tonight. Whoever is watching this from the outside is learning about tonight.
Mhm.
I think maybe part of what we can do is working on making these interactions more seamless from the outside looking in, because it doesn't look good, I don't think.
Well, I think it's an important discussion. All right, let's move on. So Shane and Lucas, do you have anything? I forgot what I asked you to do last time. Can I be honest with you? Do you have anything to report? If not, it's okay, because I didn't remind you what I asked you for.
I don't.
I don't have anything additional.
All
Hold
right,
on.
but you do have your, whoa.
Wait a minute.
I looked at your minutes, I didn't see anything.
Yes, sir. You were supposed to look up under Mass General Laws, residency requirements. Come on now.
Uh-oh, we have to talk to Miss Brown about a missed assignment here.
But you can, since, if you don't have it, that can just be added for next time, because I don't think. it needs
Residency
one,
requirements, Dave,
Yeah,
refresh my memory?
but- Yeah, we talked about,
For multi-member boards.
right.
Residency requirements for multi-member boards, and you were gonna look up Mass General Law on that?
We
Okay.
talk about maybe regulatory boards. So, planning board, ZBA.
They volunteered, Laura.
ECA plus, no, probably. So regulatory board.
Regulatory boards, mostly. Planning board members, things like that?
ZBA.
ZBA, anything.
But ECA plus, I don't think residency should necessarily be, or be on hand.
And the mayor's gonna send you a couple of interesting ideas, okay? Mayor, you might ask them to reply, because their emails have been bouncing back to me, and they get them around and about. I've been talking to Ashley about what's going on, so everybody, please continue to reply, I got it, I'll be there. Okay, if I don't hear from somebody else, soon. Okay?
Chair, I was wondering if you would let me do something just, it's kind of a hybrid between a straw poll and speed dating.
Okay, all right.
But I was just
Speed dating.
wondering if,
I'm
because
up.
we've talked about this before, 10 seconds, if you could name 3 either binding or non-binding questions you'd like to see on the ballot. I'll start. I'd like to see mayor terms, city council terms, and ranked choice voting. Anyone, is there anything else? I mean, can we narrow it down? Those are the 3 questions you want to ask, or are there many more?
Well, was school committee part of that?
Yeah, it would have
Okay,
to
so we
be.
could ask school committee too.
I would put staggered terms for the school committee and the mayor, terms for electeds, because I feel like if we're changing any of them, we should change all of them, and ranked choice voting.
I would do all of those, but I'd also ask the question on the size of the council, just to get a non-binding
Yeah,
non-binding
me
question.
too. I want-
Size of the council, and even though I think Chris's idea of like 2 counselors per district.
Well, do you think that's something the council, this committee should vote on?
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, you were asking about non-binding questions.
No, I said either or.
Oh, I apologize. No, I was talking, that was non-binding to me.
But I'm wondering.
Binding wise, we should vote on it if we get if we feel like we're close to a vote.
But I'm wondering, if we're down to 3 or 4 questions that we all sort of agree we'd like to have it, that'd probably be pretty easy to do the wording to have it ready.
There does remain some flavors to those questions, because I'm not a believer that all term limits should necessarily be the same. Mayoral term limits may be different.
This-
Are you saying term limits or length of term?
Term length of terms.
I personally thought that a lot of those questions should be non-binding, because I don't know if our flavor is representative of the city, especially with ranked choice, and I think there's an education component with ranked choice.
Yeah.
I think that the multi-winner districts and ranked choice are actually pretty closely linked. And Chris kind of threw out there as an idea, but I've done a little reading on it, and I think it can be beneficial in a lot of ways, so I would like to see those 2. And
Can you repeat that? What was the thing that you said?
multi-winner districts and ranked choice
I missed
voting
the
being
first part.
closely linked.
So that means more than like 2 reps per precinct? is what
Yes,
you're saying?
2 reps per precinct.
And now, is this something on, I'm confused, non-binding or
Well,
binding?
it sounds like probably
Well, it's
not.
also at large. At large is one we
I
already
think-
have in
I
place
think-
as a multi-year.
Yes.
I was referring to non-binding questions. Binding questions, I'm up in the air. Terms of office, I could agree with some of the stuff we've been talking about, but everything else, I have no idea where I'm gonna be on that, so.
Okay, well, never mind.
For binding, for binding
I thought it
questions.
was gonna be simple. It didn't.
Well, we have a lot of good minds.
No, but maybe not tonight, but it could be simple. I think if there was consensus as to what should be non-binding,
That I think we could get
we
to
could
easily.
work on that and get it knocked off the list.
Because it might be really quick to do if we just.
It
maybe
should,
for-
it sounds like you're halfway there already. I don't know why you guys
Not-
just threw the towel in on
Here,
that
why don't-
conversation.
No, no, I'm
You don't wanna
saying,
take away
but
from Article
I
5.
was talking about non-binding questions, but if we're doing that, we have till September to do those.
Right, but to make that distinction in that, to make those two piles.
All right, well, when we get to the big questions, I think when we decide what we want to vote on, and I have it in April now, maybe we'll get there sooner, that's when we'll decide, okay, we're not reaching any kind of a feeling like we could vote on it, and let's say 13-member council gets defeated in this meeting, goes to a non-binding question. Maybe that's what happens.
How about everyone next meeting comes back with what they would like to see as either a binding or non-binding question?
Okay, we all have homework, all right, I'll agree with that. Everybody agree with that?
I don't know if I can answer that question, quite honestly.
Well, that's okay, that's your answer.
Yeah.
That's your answer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's get into the business at hand of Article 5, if we can. Our finance director, one of the reasons that I like doing this review and being involved is because I've lived this city government for as long as it's been a city, and a lot of members have. And Melissa Zawadzki has been here a long time, and I thank her for coming. So as we go through this, I'm sure she has some ideas as well as our own. I put together stuff that I think is mostly housekeeping, and as well as Tom has put some things in. So let's begin with Article 5.1, fiscal year. We don't want to change that, do we, Mel? July?
I don't think that would be a very good idea.
All right, so does anybody want to change the fiscal year?
I don't see any-
Good idea. I don't think we should. I wonder what that would be in a transitionary period.
The federal fiscal year starts in October, but yeah, I don't see it.
They never meet their fiscal year. They can't even vote, never mind.
5-2.
Public hearing, the school committee budget. The only thing I added was, and by all available means of electronic communication. I made it simple rather than pulling out the website versus anything. I want to make it clear that the clerk has, if this council decides, or the school budget decides that they want to put it out in the website and maybe on the Facebook page for the school committee, they could do that.
I think that all is very broad, all available is very broad, because there
So?
are very many available means of electronic communication that may or may not be useful, appropriate,
Do we want to make it
or
specific to
familiar.
just the website? I agree, that's
Or
fine.
No,
just
I would say
multiple.
any.
Or customary, I don't know, something that makes it clear that it's stuff that you use,
If you said
On a
multiple, you'd anticipate it'd be more than one, but you're not,
saying,
you might say you don't want to put it up.
You don't have to use like that weird right-wing
So instead of all available, multiple means? Tom?
I have an idea here, and
Uh-oh.
maybe this is, I don't know, correct me if this is a terrible idea. Should, what if we just use the phrase electronic communication throughout this charter, and then the city council can, by ordinance, define what electronic communication means from time to
You
time?
can't because the charter's already defining it, so we'd have to eliminate that definition that we already put in the charter, because once the
Oh.
charter defines it, you can't write a law that changes that.
Sure, but can't we write something to say like, so the charter defines electronic communication to be all these things, and when we say that people should use electronic communication, what we mean is a Facebook page and an email blast. And if later some other thing comes up that we use, like, it just seems like we know that it would be good for the city to communicate electronically with people. This is something I've been sort of thinking about for a little while now, but I still don't have a fully formulated thought on it. We know that people, the city should probably be doing more to reach out to people electronically, because it's cheaper and in many cases more effective. But what exact means we use for electronic communication are going to change over time. So does it make sense to just broadly say electronic communication in the
In
charter?
accordance with city council policy, and then the city council can establish the policy.
Something like
Adapt
that.
that policy as needed.
Well, I think we could just make it
Time.
simpler, just strike by all available means. I mean,
I think
Well, so
multiple
for
means-
this, that's what I say, is we just say electronic communication.
Right.
But if we want this to be something that is like an actual thing that we're holding the city government to, then we need somewhere to say what we mean by electronic
But
communication.
we did that in
We don't mean
definitions.
yeah, but
MySpace.
we have that.
No, we
yeah, but
did
have
that in
If
definitions.
we have that in our definitions, that's the go-to.
Right, but.
And I think we left that flexible too. I'm
Mhm.
trying to pull that up, but I don't have it right now. I'm happy to say, and by electronic communication, period. Is that what people are
yeah.
feeling is good? And so anytime I say that in the article, my changes, that's what it'll be. Tom, you don't get anything until 5/7, right?
Correct.
All right. So, anything else on the school budget, Melissa? Anything? You don't care? All right, I just thought I'd ask. If I asked her. Submission to the mayor, has that timeline been okay with you?
So this is a good example of saying yes or no, or suggesting a change in 5.2 that could well be revised, or I'd have a different opinion depending on what happens in 5.3.
There you go.
And our,
Okay.
timelines and.
Well, I changed the timelines in 5.3, we'll get to that, to match what we do. If we don't, 60 days also goes down to way down here. I believe there is a point where 60 days is all we get as a council, or the budget is approved.
Well, it says 60 and it says 90 in the same paragraph.
That's why I eliminated the 90, I put 60, because also in that paragraph it says, I'm jumping ahead. Article 5.6C, action by the city council. It did say 90, I did 60. If the city council fails to take any action with respect to any item of the proposed budget within 60 days. So if the council only has 60 days, or it's done, then it should be 60 days everywhere. So it's consistent. That's what I feel. And that allows, if you give it 60 days would be, what is that, May 1st, so that we get it done by July 1st? And that's kind of what we've been doing all these years. Again, I'm trying to keep us consistent, right, Melissa? I mean,
That's been your practice.
so that bothered me that I saw 60 and 90, but it also, all the 60 days referred to that line. We can't vote down the budget. We can amend it, but we can't, like the federal government has a shutdown. The budget happens after 60 days unless we vote to amend it. That's what it says now. That would be a major change if we wanted to change that, but
I think state law says you can amend it too.
we can amend it only by reducing it. We can't
Right,
add
yeah, and
money.
that's the state, and it's 4432.
So, we couldn't change it anyway. We couldn't say, if we don't adopt it, we send it back, the government shuts down. Because the state's probably saying, we don't want our cities and towns to have their government shut down. I would agree with that. So, back up to the top, that's where, when I got to at least 60 days, that comes from the timeline that we've been using before the start of the fiscal year. And by, I'm gonna change that again, electronic communication. Does anybody wanna add anything to what I've put in? And publication on local news and by electronic communication.
Understanding how 5.3 and 5.6 work together, hypothetically, if the mayor is to submit a budget 120 days in advance of the close of the fiscal year, 5.6 would require you to act on it in no more than 60 days, or it would take effect.
That might have actually happened and we weren't
Okay.
forced to do that. You're totally right. Has that happened? I mean, did Tosdick or Karen bring in a budget like in April?
Well, usually we bring it in at the second meeting in April, like the last.
And we vote on
And
it
then- and
within
then-
60 days.
And then, in May is when you first start reviewing it. And you don't usually have a second meeting in June, so it's usually voted in early June. We don't have to have a
So
second
that's within the 60 day.
Yeah.
That's been consistent, Robert. So you're right, though. If a mayor wanted to force our hand and a mayor brought it in March, that would be great, but I don't know how you do that without knowing the state's budget and
It's always a
everything.
guess anyway, yeah.
So, but you could, it really doesn't change your process. You still have 60 days to, take your process.
Right,
And
you still
then
have.
actually, in March, you would have more meetings.
Right, yeah.
It said, I'll say.
Well, we would have to remember that we have 60 days to get it done. And that I haven't changed, and I don't know if we should change that. One of the reasons is because it is tight. You get the budget second meeting in April, we gotta get it done before the beginning of the fiscal year. So 60 days does that. If we gave ourselves 90 days, we might not get it done by the beginning of the fiscal year because we now know we have more time. So that's the reason, Laura.
Is it an option that, I don't know that this is even a concern, but is it not an option then to say 90 days or before the start of the fiscal year? Following fiscal year?
It's an option, but I don't know if it's necessary.
I don't either. I'm just saying y'all are banding that back and forth. I don't know.
I'm just going back to why
Yeah.
the 60 days is there. And I think 60 days has worked. What hasn't worked is the language in here, which we really have ignored, is the fact that it's all over the place. It hasn't been 60. So, going back to 5.3 and my changes, which are minor housekeeping. Anything else on that? It's 5.3, yes, only 5.3. I only talked about the 60 days as it refers to others in the rest of the year. And I'm only saying and by electronic communication, I'm not saying by all means. Are we okay with that? Do we want to vote on these section by section or the entire article?
I guess we should do it section by section, right? Some people might disagree with me.
Well, let's go through the whole thing because it may bounce back. If we decide to change something, then I think we should go through the whole thing. So 5.4 budget message, this is mostly the mayor. I don't have any reason to change that. Anybody?
I just had a brief question, and it may reveal my ignorance about budgets, but is budget message and budget summary the same thing or different thing?
I think the summary is more numerical, whereas the message is,
Okay.
this is
I
my
just-
policies moving forward. That's just my thinking.
I mean, message paints the picture, sets the tone.
Okay.
Very top line, you know,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we've seen, this is what we're looking for, huge anomalies or, you know, plus or minus, and then the summary is that, you know, one page kind of overview, where numerical and, you know, point out.
I was just
our
unclear
growth
from
is this,
from
yeah.
this whether they were the same
Yeah.
thing or different things,
Yeah.
and, because, good, fine, I'm
Very
fine
good.
with it. No.
So no changes in 5.4? 5.5, the biggest change I had was eliminating D, because we never do that, and it would be impossible to do that, in my view. Well, Melissa, you agree? Estimating it would be fictional.
Kind of.
My concern with estimating it on the city side
Is that we're like planning to not
Right.
spend all of our money and things, that would not really go,
What's amazing to me is, I've read this charter and I bounced over this all these years, and I never realized, we never really put in an estimated free cash account, because it's so hard to do. How do you know what your departments are gonna turn in before the end of the fiscal year? If you knew that, you'd ask, why aren't you spending this money ahead of time? I mean, how do you know?
Well, and there's no estimation from the state. I mean, it's our kind of
It's your guess.
eyeball of knowing what may or may not happen, and it's still certified by the state.
And you don't get all your revenue in, even by the end of the fiscal year. Is that true, Melissa? I'm pretty sure you don't, all your property taxes aren't in all the, by June 30th, or you, at least you should know, but you won't know until June 30th, right?
you mean of the 18?
What the revenue is. So you could estimate if you have more revenue, because that adds to free cash. If you're, in other words,
Yeah,
if,
so-
you know, I'm just saying, all the things that add into free cash are unknowns for a long time, right?
Well, right, so you estimate, so we estimate collections are gonna be, you know, basically we estimate every year that we're collecting 100% of real estate taxes.
Right.
It's not really accurate, we actually did collect 98 to 99% in Easthampton. But also, part of what makes our revenue collection number is that somebody's paying last year, this year, and that person, and the person who didn't pay this year shows up in next year.
Right.
But D asks for surplus revenue, and that's what, surplus revenue and free cash, and we can't know
Right, so
that.
like if you estimate what we're gonna collect in ambulance runs, for instance, or building permits, we make a guess, well, what has it been for the last 5 years? Well, it's going up, or, oh, the economy's changing, they're going down, we shouldn't estimate as much. So if we say, oh, we'll estimate exactly what we had last year, that, that's really kind of what the state will allow us. And we know there's a big development coming this year, we might know, well, we'll probably get a little bit extra in building.
Right.
But at the same time, if the economy is turning, well, Pat's not gonna buy a new car this year,
Right.
so I'm not gonna collect all that money from her.
Well, we'll make sure Pat buys a new car every year, because we know how much that impacts the budget.
Well, no, when people buy new cars, it does impact the budget.
I know. I pay an excise tax on a car that I don't even own, because I leased it.
Just for the benefit of the non-city councilors here, would it make sense, does everyone know what we're talking about in terms of free cash and how that works on the municipal level?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Tom. Sarah? You guys know? All right, Shane and Lucas, do you know what free cash is? All right, so who wants to educate them? I'll let Melissa, because I'll screw it up.
So, so we had a nice presentation yesterday, and I'll use Hardy's quote. It's not free and it's not cash.
Right, right.
So so municipalities operate similar to a nonprofit. If you're familiar to a nonprofit, you're not supposed to make any money. You're supposed to collect what it costs to operate the municipality. So we tax and charge fees in order to support paving of roads, plowing of streets,
Police.
fire, police, safety inspections, Board of Health, any number of departments. Services, council on aging, department, whatever. Schools, big one. And so you guess, you have an educated guess at the beginning of the year, this is what the taxes are, this is how many houses we have, this is how many cars we have registered, this is how much we're gonna collect in taxes. We know that we make, that permits over the last few years, that's a big collection item, to when you put on a deck, build a new house, that kind of thing, where a big development comes into town. So you kind of know what you're expected to receive. And you say, okay, we're gonna collect $40 million this year. And then everyone says, well, it costs $25 million to run a school system. It costs, and all the money gets dished out. And you're supposed to have collected 40
And spend.
and spent 40.
Balanced budget.
Balanced budget. And so we always estimate conservatively because the nightmare is at the end of the year, you collected 38, you spent 42,
Yeah.
big problems. So what you do is you estimate 40 and you hope for 45, and you're really happy at the end of the year that you ended up with 41, and a couple of departments had some turnover, and the
They
guy
didn't
making
spend all their
most
money.
left, and the new guys getting the bottom of the scale, and if they gave back, 10 grand or 20 grand, or they didn't do that project this year and they're gonna do it next year. And at the end of the day, you have, a little free cash. And that, what we use that $1 million for, when we get it, because we got about $1.5 million this year, is we go, oh, okay, well, we didn't really budget to buy that dump truck. And if we don't buy a dump truck,
Can't plow the streets.
can't plow the streets, so we buy the dump truck. That's kind of how that works.
So free cash, just to be clear, as a layman, isn't free and it isn't cash. It's what everybody, it's the excess revenue, surplus revenue. It's the money turned in by departments that they didn't use them because they had a turnover in the department. And all of that money is certified by the DOR. We don't get to know what that is because they look at our receipts, they look at our revenues, and they, from July 1st until what, October? That's about when we get there, or late September, we get a notification, you have 1.5 million in free cash because you had a surplus last year. And you have 1.5 million enterprise earnings, that's the water department. Like, that's kind of what we got this year.
The
And it
difference,
is possible to have negative.
yeah.
And if you have a negative, which I think happened in 2008, didn't it?
The biggest distinction.
It was
is
very close.
for you guys is-
We could have to find ways, I know, because we had to do a ballot question and override. Okay, we can't manage our budget as structurally deficit. We had to do that once. It was defeated, by the way. But that was a while ago.
Compared to a business, so if a business has a surplus, it just rolls over. It's not encumbered, but municipal money is encumbered. You just can't, if you have extra money, it doesn't mean you can just do what you want with it. Budgets have line items, departments, and there's a general fund, but it doesn't necessarily, like a business can, so to speak, slosh money around. Cities cannot do that.
Well, but they don't. The business doesn't answer to the taxpayers.
Well, right, that's why I'm trying to make the distinction so they know what free cash is. It could be a paper surplus, but there's a little bit more to it than that.
And all money spent has to be appropriated.
Right.
So even if there's extra money,
Yeah.
unless
Right,
the
and
council
so
appropriates it, you can't
For
spend it.
any money that, so we had $1.5 million in free cash, there's about 750 still available now because we purchased a whole bunch of small capital.
And we
items.
moved some into savings.
And, right, and then we, and if at the end of the year, we close the year and we didn't spend that 750, it'll just sit there and then at the end of next year, it'll still be there. So if we had the perfect, we collected 40, we spent 40, the 750 would be certified as free cash again if nothing else moved. So, you know, when you.
It keeps turning over.
If you sit, if it just sits there, that's part of what comes into the next year's money to use.
Laura?
I am trying to steer the conversation. So I had some questions about capital improvement and how that plays into free cash and how the process is for capital improvement that we have laid out. I'm just curious to know, to kind of tease out where any flexibility is in how we manage that, just looking at her. So I'm wondering if you can talk, or whoever is, to just speak about how capital improvement plays into all of that with budgeting.
So the mayor implemented a different process for us, for the capital improvement plan, a different look and feel of how we present that. And actually, if you read the capital improvement, it's actually a little more in line with what it says we should do here. And so what we did this year is we not only collected all the requests from the departments, but we scheduled them over the next 5 years. You know, when could we afford to pay for those things? And there were 6 categories, I believe, of how those things would be paid for. One was free cash, and we kind of, while we don't estimate free cash, we assume that we'll get about the same every year unless something really horrible happens.
Or good.
And so, but then there's, you know, we have set aside capital stabilization, which we use to slowly pay for some things that would be set aside free cash this year because we didn't have something to buy, but maybe that will pay for something next year when we have to buy 2 really big things rather. And then we have a small amount that we have put into the budget where debt is acquired for items that, you know, like if we bought a fire truck last year, if we had taken $650,000 and bought the fire truck, then no other department would have been able to get any of their equipment. So we took that fire truck and a few other big, an ambulance and a dump truck, and we borrowed $1.25 million, and we're going to spend that over the next 3 years, like a car loan, to pay that off. Actually, that one's a 5-year because it was $1.25 million. And once that's paid off, we'll put in another ambulance and, you know, maybe 2 dump trucks or whatever the big ticket item is that we need, that if we just did it for cash, it would kind of be disproportionate for all the departments. So, and then there are, you know, we have tracked in the capital, you know, we have debt exclusions here in Easthampton, and, you know, I put in our capital plan the cost of this new school and what that will cost every year, and what that looks like on the debt, and the cost of paying for the school that we have over the next 5 years. It's not the total cost of that school, but what does it cost us annually to maintain? And the other things we'll start to put in is the maintenance stuff, because the public safety is now paid for, but that means it's 20 to 25 years old, and it will probably need a roof, and we've got to do some paving, and there's a little bit of HVAC work to be done. And so if you do some major renovations, then we can kind of put those in as how we plan for, are we gonna put that in as debt, within, not as an exclusion, but within the tax rate to just sort of, you know, a roof on that building, I'm thinking it's gonna be a pretty big ticket item. Not really a construction person, but I'm guessing it's more than my roof. And I know that the HVAC work that needs to be done there is substantial too, so we could do some, you know, a small renovation, maybe instead of buying, equipment over the next few years, in that small debt, or we're trying to say, we, reserve in the general fund. That's how in the general fund, we reserve for capital to be paid annually, not just in with free cash, or, oh, we got a grant this year and it will pay for street sweeper or whatever.
But is it, like, so that plays into one part of how that free cash is allotted or could be planned for, right? So that's like the city. And does it work well, in the opinion of both of you, with this scheduling, that you're submitting that 150 days in advance? So I assume that's typically coming out in advance of the budget, because that's like the wish list essentially, with a rough timeline and and that's a simple as a movie.
Wish list is a funny term. So what I have put in place as far as the capital improvement plan, it is yes, coming out early. It's not necessarily a wish list. It is
That's a little, sorry.
plan. Yeah, it's I don't know, I'm trying to think of how many, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I put forward the capital improvement plan to city council for just review and in the public record. And not only for the public to know what we are hoping to expend over the next 6 years, but also for the departments to understand, so as they're getting ready to put together the fiscal year 20 budgets for their departments, they can reasonably expect from my office a strong commitment that in 2022, a dump truck or a truck, we're going to budget to purchase that piece of equipment in 2022. It helps them with the preceding fiscal years around repair, around maintenance, around shifting of equipment, or other line items in their budget. So it's a guide. You know, so this year's capital plan was very detailed with narrative and the what's and the what fors. It's on the website, and it paints the picture of what the departments are going to do with the municipality dollars that are coming at us. But it's also a planning tool.
It's also required at 5.8. I just want to point out that the mayor fulfills her obligation by doing that in 5.8. In 5.5, where it says proposed capital expenditures, it doesn't require that you spend money on capital, but if you do, you have to, am I reading this right, Melissa? Where it's 5.5, proposed capital expenditures during the ensuing fiscal year, it doesn't require that you decide to, because we've moved them out of the budget, we've put them into a plan, and we've used free cash if we had it.
Right.
But it does say that if you do put it in the budget, you must detail it, what it is for each agency. But it doesn't say you have to put it in the budget, is what I'm getting at.
Right, so.
I don't read that as a
Right,
must.
right,
A mandate.
but the accounting officer does, because that's the way she has to report it.
The budget is,
I understand
1 year,
that, but
the
I'm
capital
saying, when
plan
you,
is 5
when
years,
you
so
provide a
it's-
budget for the fiscal year starting in July 1, you may not have any capital. We used to have police cruisers in there all the time, now we don't.
Right.
What I'm saying is, you have the right not to put capital in the budget, but if you did, what this is saying is you have to detail it. Instead, we use 5.8, you detail what you hope you can do over the years
In a capital
based in a capital plan, and then you attack it when you have the money, either from stabilization capital or from free cash. I'm just saying, I was thinking, do we have to change that? I don't think we do. Because if you do put it in the budget, it should be detailed.
Right. I mean,
I'm just saying you don't have to, but you,
Right, I don't object to that. I mean.
no, this is me in my head saying, should we eliminate that because we have 5.8? No, let's keep it there.
That's-
But we started all this by the fact that we're eliminating D. Okay, so D is about free cash, which we have a very difficult time. And to be honest with you, over the years, we have not dealt that. We've kind of not done what we're supposed to do, I guess, but. So is everybody okay with eliminating that section?
Yes.
Does everybody understand why we're eliminating it?
Yep.
Okay. 5.6, action on the budget, public hearing. I'm just changing that to end by electronic communication. A notice, not the word of. I have asked in review that we codify the fact, even though it says in 2, that or Article 2, that everything goes to committee, I want to codify that it has to go to committee in the budget in here. It always does, it goes to the finance committee, and I put standing or select committee because maybe a future council wants to do something different with a budget committee versus a finance committee, but
Okay.
you know what I'm saying? But I just wanted to codify that, that was me. That's what we do. We talked about putting in more clarity in here, even if it's in another part of the budget or in ordinance or in law, we should still do it.
A few less words,
I think that's fine.
Huh?
you could probably delete standing or select and just say, shall refer the budget to a committee.
I think you're right, but also we've used that standing or select committee language
Yes.
pretty consistently throughout.
And I agree, and I also feel like we have a finance committee, but we want to give the option to the council to do a different committee. Maybe the future council wants to say the select committee on the budget, and it's different members of the council.
A committee keeps it completely wide open. The council can do anything the council wants.
What do you think? I agree with Tom, though. We've used standing or select. Some of that is coming from original charter language.
Yeah,
Right.
the only reason why I like standing and select, even though it is a few extra words, is first of all, it's not that big of a deal to have a few extra words in my opinion, but also, if I'm for instance, a first-term city councilor who is looking at this, having it explicitly say right there, like you have these options, is just helpful guidance. It's right though that it could just say committee. It doesn't really change the meaning, but
Joe, you've been around a while. What do you think of that? Should we just do that? I just want to make sure it goes to a committee.
I would just say appropriate committee.
I don't care.
I'm a wise guy now, I don't care.
well, that's
You should write some edits.
We've used standing or select committee was used earlier by this charter. I think we should just leave it, in my opinion.
Moving on.
Going on to 2/3 vote, that is required, I think, by state law, when you appropriate. So I wanted to make sure it's clear that that has to happen. Do we need it? Maybe we haven't needed it, but again, I'm trying to be clear to the public that it's a 2/3 vote. And I again changed 90 to 60. We talked about that already. Because if the city council fails to take any action with respect to the item in its proposed budget within 60 days following the date of the receipt of the proposed budget, or such other period may be provided by general law, that amount shall, without any action by the city council, become part of the appropriations for the next fiscal year. So if we don't take a vote in June, the mayor's budget is done. I don't want to change that, and I don't think Mel says we can't change it, even if we wanted to.
No, I
Right.
mean, the ability to vote only down is part of state law, it looks like, when I was looking at that.
So in other words, if we could say, we could eliminate that, and then the city could shut down because the council doesn't take any action. If we eliminate the fact that there's 60 days, I don't want to change that. I'm not saying we should, but I'm just saying, I think that's dangerous. We have a mayor form of government, the executive does deal with the operations of the city. To say that councilors have a better sense and decide to shut down the government, I don't see, I think that's way too dangerous.
We don't allow that to
So
happen.
let's just
Yeah, we don't need
do
to
what
talk
you
about
did
this
and move
anymore.
on.
Yes, let's not
Move
change
on.
Talk about this anymore.
Keep
All
going.
right, good. So we're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, Tom, you had, you wanted to put electronic communication in 5.7?
well,
looking
sort
at-
of. It's so.
We shall forward
in
that notice to the city
5.7
council.
Right. Yeah. So in 5.7, there's a section that says whenever an intra-departmental transfer, so a transfer of money within a department, is authorized by the mayor, it should be filed with the clerk of the city council. And my My thought there was that it's probably filed with the clerk of the city council, because while it doesn't require the authorization of the city council, to the extent that the city council is a fiscal oversight board, you might want to know how much your budget is being changed from what you actually approved. In terms of, like, if you said that that the Parks Department was gonna get all of this money for this one thing, and then it was getting moved into something else, that might be something you're at least curious about. Thus, the clerk of the council is there, so that's information that the city council could look up. And I just thought that it might be nice to have a step there to say that information is then just forwarded to the councilors. Of course, again, they have no ability to block it, but it just might be interesting information to see. And I don't think to walk in and say, what kind of interdepartmental transfers have gone on this week? Because I don't know.
I say good, sir.
I'm not married to this idea. I just thought we might want to talk about it.
Well, the mayor's required to tell us, so telling us could be electronic. We're
Right.
giving the mayor an option, I hear. Am I hearing that?
Well, I mean, so currently, I don't receive any notification. I mean, I know that
You do.
they're filed with the clerk of
Actually,
the
you do,
council.
and the clerk puts them in your box. I've gotten them.
Oh,
You may not get them in the packet,
right.
so this is a hole. I think you're right. We should fill it, electronic communication.
Rather than it just ending up in our mailboxes.
Because I've gotten notices of intra-department transfers all the time. Yes, no.
So I just want to say it doesn't happen that often because we don't move from paper clips to printing toner. Like we,
Right.
like it's all, like if it's all, you know what I mean? There's like 50 lines of like, this is for batteries and this is for oil or whatever. It's all, like, all the supplies are gonna, like, they just float around and we're not gonna tell anyone about that. But if we decide, like we're short in salary, there was a mistake made and it's only $500 because we forgot to put in somebody's longevity pay, we might just pull that out of our supply budget and say, we won't order that extra crate of paper or something,
So,
So that would be only the moving from supplies to personnel, or
Right.
personnel to supplies is the only time that actually happens. But within supplies itself, even though they're.
Right, yeah, that would be silly.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking it would be cool if we're getting that, if we would just got notified via our emails.
or if it's in the packet.
Or if it's in the packet.
What I'm saying is we used to do that, because we used to get all the packets handed to us. They weren't
Right.
PDFs. So we used to always get them, we still get them by paper because the clerk gives it to us, but we don't get
But
them
everything
necessarily
else
with the
is
council.
electronic.
I think we should keep it, I think you're right. My opinion, we should keep Tom's change. Anybody else on this?
I'm fine.
Transparency.
All right, I'll write it in, Tom.
Okay.
Interdepartmental transfers, I also wanted to do the 2/3 vote here.
Okay.
And I added published in summary in the local newspaper and by all available means of electronic, and I'll change that to electronic communication. I did the publishing because a public hearing is published in summary, right? And the clerk doesn't want us to do it, and I don't think, Melissa wants to say something, go ahead.
So,
With an open mind, if it pleases.
so the charter is more restrictive than state law in this matter. So if there's interdepartmental transfer did not say between municipal agencies, what would be determined as an interdepartmental transfer would be within the sections of, so the council only votes sections. You only vote the sections of the budget. And so without that language, the default rule is that anything like debt, for instance, I'm gonna come to you next month with a debt transfer between principal and interest. And I need you to approve it.
It's within the one section of debt
Which
in the
is in the
budget.
one section of debt. And I need you to approve that, but honestly, it's debt and it has a net zero impact on the budget, and it doesn't really, interest was higher than I estimated in January when we borrowed in May, so I have some other places to pay the principal, and I'm just gonna move the principal down to interest to cover the debt expenditure I need for this year. I have to pay it out of the right bucket, and those are considered two different departments within our budget, but they're really the same.
So you would like a change there, I'm hearing.
Well, it would be convenient for me, so I won't be on,
So,
let's just put it
if you're
out.
talking about within a section,
Yeah,
but if you're gonna move money from the mayor's budget to the police department, which is a public safety.
those are two different sections.
So
But-
that isn't, but this says municipal agency.
Well, the way we do it is the agency, that's department, so mayor's office and my office are all general government. So we have to ask permission, like, if there's something that, like, if I have a surplus and she has a deficit, rather than go for an appropriation, I can just give it, you know what I mean? Like, I can just do an intra-departmental transfer, as if it's within local government, then we just notify you of that, and we don't have to come for a reserve transfer.
I'm confused because if a municipal agency, general government, it has you, finance, it has the mayor's office. Currently, you feel that this, if you're gonna transfer money from the finance department to the mayor's office in an interdepartmental transfer, we need to be notified. I'm wondering,
No, those are votes that have to come to the council. I
right,
have
that's
to-
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I guess I misunderstand. What do we want to change? I'm misunderstanding this totally.
I want it to look like an intra, unless I'm voting from reserve to the fire department, or from the fire department to.
So, but municipal agency, as it's defined, is the problem, I think.
Yeah.
Because municipal agency, I gotta go back and look at definitions, but I think that means a department, doesn't
Why
it?
is that being interpreted as a section? Is that because it's
No,
right
no,
somewhere else in the?
No, this is,
How
it
should it
says
read?
municipal agency.
Right. So how do you define
The
that?
default language is how this council votes. The council doesn't vote by municipal agency, it votes by section.
When it approves the budget.
When it votes the budget, which is the default language for transfers. You know, if you don't have this if you don't have this language, the default language interpreted is how the council votes is the limit. So if you were to vote, so like, I've worked in communities where they voted a bottom line budget, which meant the town manager or the city manager had the ability, and they were not cities, they were towns, had the ability to move anything within the budget. So to the degree, the level that you vote the budget is the default language unless otherwise restricted here. So
And
that-
it is otherwise restricted. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, and so I'm asking if you really want to restrict it, that's all.
I don't think we do, but my problem is the word municipal agency is public safety department versus finance
But
department.
she's
In
saying
other-
it's getting kicked back to how you're voting the budget, above and beyond the language in the charter. The default is getting kicked back to how you're, so you would either need to amend the way that you vote the budget, or you would need to
No.
remove or rewrite the, right,
No,
or
what
you
I'm
would
saying
remove or rewrite
what I'm
this.
saying is I
Just
don't
for-
want to talk to Chris. No, I'm just saying. No, I just want to put a piece of paper, but no, what I'm saying is.
You
if-
want section B gone?
Yes.
No.
Yes, that's what you want.
That's what she
Yeah,
said,
that's
that's what
what
we're
she
asking.
Well, wait a minute.
Melissa and I
And
are
treat it
asking.
like the school department where they can
Right.
spend to the bottom line.
Right.
No, wait, I don't understand.
Within
By
their
statute, by
department.
statute.
Within their department,
Yeah.
within their department.
Department, yes. Oh, interdepartmental transfers to me always meant section to section.
So if we change municipal agency to section of the city government, would that do the trick? Is that what you're
Because I
asking?
want to be able to still approve, if you want
Melissa
to
wants
move
to get rid of
money
it all.
out of, if you want to move money out of reserve into public safety, that's a
No,
supplement.
That's not what she's saying.
No, no, no,
That's not what she's
But
saying.
is that an interdepartmental transfer?
It is an interdepartmental transfer, but it's between sections, and so therefore we have to.
But in other words, we can't eliminate B, we have to change the word municipal agency to what Tom just said or something.
Right, yeah. And then if I wanted to move principal to interest, it would be a notification.
Rather than a
Melissa's
request.
moving
And the whole
principles and
commission.
interests
Is
for
it-
debt
is it-
management.
So
that
municipal
simple?
agency is too broad a definition.
It's
Be-
too narrow, it's narrow.
No, but
For now, all right,
it's
whatever.
simple enough just to change it to section?
Yes.
So what we
Well, then
need to
propose
keep
that, please.
though, is interdepartmental transfers between departments. We need to define what those departments are, so that we still have the ability to vote. It's okay for you to take reserve money and move it to public safety, or public safety money and move it to,
That's
Trying
not
to
Schools.
avoid, trying to avoid making it more cumbersome, that it's gonna have to get a vote.
I think the argument the other way around would be the council puts effort into reviewing those lines and approving those lines on a line-by-line basis, and to then change that line mid-year without being aware of it
Well, she
defeats the
notifies,
purpose.
she doesn't-
Well, we are
But
being
without
aware.
having the ability to
Prevent
review it and comment on it.
I-
defeats-
anyone-
Why
personally-
bother have the council, why bother approve those lines to start with if they could be changed willy-nilly during the year?
well, no, I don't agree that they're being, when we go to approve them, we approve them line by line because we have the ability to amend at that point,
Right.
where we might say, I don't agree with this line, I'm gonna move that, no, you're not gonna buy that this year. We're gonna amend that. That's at the budget process.
Right.
We don't have the ability to appropriate. So because of that, we could, when we review line, excuse me, line by line, we're reviewing it for that reason. But later on, if we say, okay, the public safety or the general government budget is approved, and within that section, you want to move money from treasury or whatever department, you're called to the mayor, you're saying we should be able to do that without going to the council because we've already approved the article.
And you can do that now under intra-department transfers.
No.
We can't because of
Okay,
this,
okay.
because of this language, because it says municipal agency, because those are two different agencies.
Mm.
So can somebody restate that proposal from like?
Well, I think what I need from Melissa is language. What are we eliminating, or, because I want to be able to still approve between departments,
Between different.
Sections.
Different sections.
yeah.
So, there's a term.
Did we define city agency before?
Governmental. Well, there's general.
City agency is defined, but section is not.
Right, yeah.
Just to be nitpicky, it's municipal agency in the charter language. not city agency.
No, it is, did we change it? Because it says
It
city.
says city
it says
agency in
city
definitions.
Yeah.
Well, then it should be city
But the
agency.
language in the text that
Five,
we're
seven.
referring to
Reading.
is
Says
municipal.
municipal.
Oh, yeah,
Twice.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
that's true, okay.
Dana, Shane's got something to say.
Just to be
Well,
clear,
can I give you a little homework, Mel?
Yeah,
Can you
I'm
give
looking.
us language?
I'll
I mean,
grab it.
for the next meeting?
Yeah.
Let's go with
Because I
changes.
think it's important that we do language that works for city government efficiently, but I'll say this, I don't want to take council authority away when it comes to moving money between two different sections, public safety to
Budget
the mayor's
sections.
office or reserve.
Right.
Those are interdepartment transfers. They're not supplemental appropriations, they're
Right.
interdepartment, and they have to be maintained. Do you agree with that, Joe? Because you've been here a while. I just think that we need to
No, I
maintain.
don't disagree with that at all. Because the default by law is however closely you vote the budget, which you vote by section, we would have to at least go to you to move from one section to the other.
Right.
To the detail that you vote the budget, if you wanna sit through and read all
If you-
3,000 lines of the budget, then we couldn't move anything.
If you wanted to move it down to paper clips, vote it down to
Right, yeah,
paper clips, you
yeah.
could.
But what this is also saying is, if you wanted to move money from fire to police, you're gonna be able to do that without having to come to us. Because that's in one public safety section. And as far as I'm concerned, that's okay, because we approved as a council the
Right.
public safety budget. Now, Bob, when we went through that, line by line, the fire department wants to add 3 people, and the mayor says, I'd like to add 3 people. We may say no at that time. That's why we go through it line by line. Because we can say no to something, we can't say, oh, we want to add the 3 people and override the mayor. We're not allowed by state law to add to the budget. We're only allowed to reduce it. So that's why we do the line by line then. But when we approve it with the final vote, the public safety vote for that section, what Melissa is saying is, I want to have the ability to move money from fire to police if I want to, or
From principal.
in the past, we haven't been able to do that.
Right.
So the wording is what we need.
I'll get it from Val, because she's the one who reminds me of the rules.
Well, is this her suggestion too? Should
She,
be-
every time she tells me, she's like, you know.
Well, I'm happy. I have no problem. I mean, does everybody agree with the notion, we're not gonna deal with the language tonight?
For
For
5.7B.
5.7B, right.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're gonna try and, except for the 2/3 majority, what about publishing? I go back to way back when Sarah said, let's get information to all the people any way it's possible. It's not required now. But when we do a public hearing on an interdepartmental transfer, it has to be in the paper. It's summarized. We don't go into detail like you do on a piece of paper we get, but
Not really.
it's summarized. The people know that there's,
We don't.
All public hearings have to be in the paper.
No,
we don't do public hearings?
we do a public hearing, we don't do a public, like,
Publishing. You don't publish that in the paper.
But don't all public hearings have to be published in the paper?
I thought they did.
If it's a hearing where you're receiving comment,
I
as a
think it
hearing,
has
not a
to be.
public meeting.
The clerk has to put any public
You
hearing
mean,
notice.
you mean notification,
Yeah,
or
a
do you
hearing's a
mean?
different thing than a meeting. I
We have to have
believe
a
all
public
hearings
hearing
have to be
for interdepartmental transfers.
I know there's not advertising.
I mean, we have public meetings that, or public hearings.
But they're in the city council,
They're
during
in
the
the
city
city
council
council.
meeting, so they're on the agenda.
But they're not
Not, that's,
separately
there's nothing,
ads.
There was advertising within the last week.
Let me say this.
Relative to a financial matter.
The reason I
Right,
did
but
this-
it's financial
That's
manner,
free
not
cash.
just
Okay,
because it
okay.
was, yeah.
I think we do, but the other reason is, this says by rule. I don't think it should be a rule. I think it should be codified in the charter that if we're gonna move money from one department to another, we should tell the people we're doing it. Because we approved public safety's budget and the mayor's budget, and now we're gonna move that money. And I think we should notify the people that we're doing it. Now, I don't know if we do now, I'm pretty sure we have to, because it's a public hearing.
I know we don't, because that's why we spend money from reserve, because we don't have to put the legal ad in. And when Barbara's gonna come to you for $800, because she doesn't have enough money for legal ads, so that you have to put a legal ad, spend $100.
So public hearings
she
aren't
can get
always,
$800.
public hearings aren't always notified.
Not, like, you know how you have to put the whole thing in for something from free cash or stabilization, but to.
Well, let's keep it then, I would agree, if we don't have to do it now,
You, especially for those small dollar
Right, that's-
amounts. you don't
let's just
have-
keep it to electronic communication. It's on the website, it's on the docket, it's just not in the
And there
paper.
are public hearings that are in the council packet, but are. of-
Not advertised in the paper.
But there are some that have to be. So, for
Yeah.
instance, like a lot of the bonding language, you know, and when that exactly is going to happen.
Right.
That was a $450 ad.
But
and
supplemental
then it's very
appropriations
trial.
don't have to?
it's huge, yeah.
Right.
Right.
But a
That I
public
get,
hearing
that I get.
on thin plastic bag ordinance, legal ads not.
Well, it does say the city bulletin board, so I would like to, the city's bulletin board now is a website. I'd like to keep it to electronic communication, but eliminate the paper, because that costs money.
The newspapers, we have.
Yeah,
I-
I'm eliminating that, but I am adding, and so where it says by its rules, I'm crossing that out, such rule, all of that. Rules can be changed very easily depending on the council's whim. Transparency says, let's keep it codified that it has to be communicated electronically. That's my point.
And it just, so, and.
Website.
Not on our. like,
Well, it could be on the bulletin
We have a posting board at the end of this hall and then outside, so are you saying,
No, I'm not changing that. It says city
Yeah, it's
bulletin
just-
board and by electronic communication. That's
You're
all
gonna
I'm-
strike local newspaper.
Correct.
I'm just striking local newspaper, and I'm just adding and by electronic communication.
Yeah, why are you gonna ask the city to spend money on that?
I just want, transparency says I want people to know about it.
Yeah.
You gotta
I'm
save your
okay
local
with
paper.
no newspaper because we haven't been.
He's gonna buy it if it's
Agreed.
full of it.
I thought, does everybody hear that? I'm okay with not adding newspaper because we never have.
Correct.
I thought we did because it's a public hearing. I never really researched that. I just let Barbara do it, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah.
since we haven't done it, I'm okay with not putting it in the paper, but I am wanting it to be on the website. And I think it does get to the website because you tell us the transfers. I get a packet.
I was good, right.
It's already there, but I'm just saying, we're codifying it. It's not by rule, okay? You good? Good? You wanted to add current balance of funds available.
Yes, I sort of have.
This is Tom, so it's, if you look at what Tom has presented, by the way, 57B.
Right. So I sort of have this for 57B and 57C. The rationale I had for this is coming in my first few months on the city council, there was a lot of, we'd get asked.
Oh, Jesus.
You all right?
Are you okay?
I need a break.
Okay.
Somebody just died.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll take a break. Take a
Adjourn,
break.
do not
Let's take a
adjourn,
break.
for 5 minutes, please.
Just hit the stop button on
Let's
there.
take a 5.
Quarter to 8, we stop at 8 anyway.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
What time is it?
Shut it off, let's go.
Would you?
Dan, I
cannot believe this crap.
I'm sorry again.
Well, first she said no, and then she said 2 days, and then she just called me and said he is gone. All right.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to get.